What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actors walks into what he thinks is a friendly late-night interview, only to find himself ambushed by a host with a hidden agenda? Tonight, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that had Johnny Depp storming off Jimmy Kimmel's set, leaving millions of viewers stunned and the entertainment world buzzing. This isn't just another celebrity spat. This is a masterclass in how quickly things can go sideways when egos clash and professionalism goes out the window. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me which late-night host you think handles controversial guests the best. The green room at Jimmy Kimmel Live was buzzing with the usual pre-show energy. Johnny Depp sat in his chair, adjusting his rings and checking his phone one last time before the interview. He'd done hundreds of these appearances over the years, promoting films, sharing stories, the typical Hollywood dance. Tonight was supposed to be different, though, a chance to discuss his latest project and maybe share some lighter moments with the audience. What he didn't know was that Jimmy Kimmel had other plans entirely. "Johnny, we're ready for you," the production assistant called out, her clipboard clutched tightly as she led him down the familiar hallway toward the stage. The audience was already warmed up, their energy palpable even backstage. Depp had always fed off that energy, the connection between performer and crowd that made live television so electric. As he stepped through the curtain, the audience erupted. The familiar theme music swelled as Johnny made his way across the stage, that signature swagger intact despite everything he'd been through in recent years. He waved to the crowd, that boyish grin spreading across his face as he settled into the guest chair across from Kimmel's desk. "Johnny Depp, everybody," Kimmel announced, his smile wide but something cold lurking behind his eyes. "Thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate you taking the time." "Always a pleasure, Jimmy," Depp replied, his voice carrying that distinctive cadence that had charmed audiences for decades. "Thanks for having me." The first few minutes proceeded normally enough. They discussed his upcoming film, a passion project he'd been developing for years. Depp was animated, genuinely excited about the work, his hands moving expressively as he described the character he'd created. The audience was eating it up, laughing at his anecdotes and hanging on every word. "So this character," Kimmel interrupted, leaning forward slightly. "He's pretty dark, right? I mean, you seem drawn to these complicated, morally ambiguous roles." "Well, I think the most interesting characters are the ones with layers," Depp responded thoughtfully. "People aren't just good or bad, you know. We all have our shadows, our complexities. That's what makes us human." "Speaking of shadows," Kimmel said, his tone shifting almost imperceptibly, "you've had your share of controversies lately, haven't you?" The smile on Depp's face flickered for just a moment, but he maintained his composure. "I think we all have moments we're not proud of, Jimmy. That's part of being human, too. But some moments are bigger than others, right?" Kimmel pressed, his voice taking on an edge that made the audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I mean, when you're in the public eye like you are, those moments tend to follow you around." Depp's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I'm here to talk about my work, Jimmy. I thought that's what we agreed on." "Oh, we did." Kimmel nodded, but there was something predatory in his expression now. "But you know how these things go. Sometimes the conversation takes unexpected turns." The production crew behind the cameras began to sense the tension. The director's voice crackled through headsets, reminding everyone to stay focused. But there was an undercurrent of nervousness spreading through the studio. This wasn't how these interviews typically went. "I've always been curious about something," Kimmel continued, completely ignoring Depp's obvious discomfort. "How do you separate the art from the artist? I mean, when someone's personal life becomes such a spectacle, does that change how people see their work?" "I think that's a question for the audience, not for me," Depp replied, his fingers drumming against the arm of his chair. "I just try to do good work and let that speak for itself. But it doesn't always work that way, does it?" Kimmel's smile was becoming more of a smirk now. "Sometimes the personal stuff overshadows everything else. Sometimes it becomes impossible to separate the two." The audience was growing restless, sensing the shift in energy but not quite understanding what was happening. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect from late-night television. This felt more like an interrogation. "Jimmy?" Depp said quietly, but there was steel in his voice now. "I came here as a guest, not as a defendant." Hey, I'm just asking questions, Kimmel shrugged, but his expression suggested he was enjoying this far more than he should have been. That's what we do here, right? We have conversations. Sometimes those conversations get a little uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is one thing, Depp replied, leaning forward in his chair. Ambush is something else entirely. The word hung in the air like a challenge. The audience fell silent, finally understanding that they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't scripted banter or playful ribbing between celebrities. This was real tension, real conflict playing out in real time. Ambush? Kimmel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Come on, Johnny, you're a big boy. You can handle a few tough questions, can't you? Depp's eyes narrowed, and for the first time since sitting down, he looked genuinely angry. Tough questions are fine, Jimmy. But there's a difference between journalism and cheap shots. Is that what you think this is? Kimmel's voice rose slightly, matching Depp's energy. A cheap shot? I think this is you trying to make a name for yourself by tearing someone else down. Depp shot back, his composure finally cracking. And frankly, it's beneath both of us. The studio fell completely silent except for the hum of cameras and lights. Even the production crew had stopped their usual bustling, everyone frozen as they watched two Hollywood figures square off in a way none of them had ever seen before. Kimmel's expression hardened at Depp's accusation, the pretense of friendly host finally dropping completely. Making a name for myself? Johnny, I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't need to tear anyone down to stay relevant. Then why are we here? Depp demanded, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Why aren't we talking about my film? Why aren't we having the conversation we agreed to have? Because sometimes the elephant in the room is bigger than whatever movie you're hawking, Kimmel replied coldly. And sometimes someone needs to address it. Depp stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward slightly. The sudden movement sent a ripple of shock through the audience, several people gasping audibly. You want to address something, Jimmy? Let's address the fact that you ambushed a guest on your own show. Let's address your complete lack of professionalism. Sit down, Johnny, Kimmel said. But there was uncertainty creeping into his voice now. This wasn't going according to whatever plan he'd had. No, I don't think I will, Depp replied, his hands clenched at his sides. I think I'll stand right here and let everyone see exactly what kind of host you really are. The cameras kept rolling, the directors torn between cutting to commercial and capturing what was clearly television gold, albeit of the most uncomfortable variety. The audience sat in stunned silence, some pulling out their phones to record what they were witnessing. Look, if you can't handle a few pointed questions about your very public controversies, Kimmel began, but Depp cut him off with a sharp laugh. Pointed questions? Is that what you call this hatchet job? Depp's voice rose, carrying clearly throughout the studio. You invited me here under false pretenses, Jimmy. You told my people this was about my work, about my new film. Instead, you're trying to play gotcha journalism with someone who came here in good faith. Good faith? Kimmel scoffed, leaning back in his chair as if trying to distance himself from Depp's intensity. That's rich coming from you. The comment hit like a physical blow, and Depp's entire demeanor shifted. The playful actor, the charming guest, all of that disappeared in an instant, replaced by something much more dangerous. Excuse me? Depp's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it even more menacing. You heard me, Kimmel replied, but some of his earlier bravado was fading. He was beginning to realize he might have pushed too far. No, I want you to say it clearly, Depp insisted, taking a step closer to the desk. I want you to explain to everyone watching what you meant by that. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Crew members were looking at each other nervously, unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. The audience sat frozen, afraid to even breathe too loudly. I meant, Kimmel said slowly, that maybe someone who's been in as many tabloid headlines as you have doesn't get to lecture me about good faith. There it is, Depp said, nodding slowly. There's the real Jimmy Kimmel, not the funny guy, not the beloved late-night host, just another vulture picking at carrion. That's enough, Kimmel snapped, his composure finally breaking. You're a guest on my show, and you'll show some respect. Respect? Depp laughed bitterly. You want to talk about respect? You ambush me on live television, You make personal attacks disguised as interview questions, and then you want to lecture me about respect? I'm asking legitimate questions about legitimate concerns, Kimmel shot back, rising from his chair to match Depp's energy. Legitimate according to who? Depp demanded. According to the tabloids? According to social media? According to people who've never met me but think they know my entire life story? According to the public record, Kimmel replied, his voice getting louder. According to court documents. According to sworn testimony. The audience gasped collectively. Even for late-night television, this was crossing lines that usually remained uncrossed. Several people in the front row looked genuinely uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and whispering to each other. Court documents, Depp repeated slowly, his voice dripping with disdain. So now you're a legal expert, Jimmy. You've read all the files. You've heard all the testimony. You've weighed all the evidence? I've read enough, Kimmel replied defensively. Enough for what? Enough to ambush someone on your show? Enough to try and destroy someone's reputation for a few viral moments? Depp's voice was building again, his anger becoming more focused, more articulate. Nobody's trying to destroy anything, Kimmel protested, but his words sounded weak even to his own ears. Then what is this? Depp gestured broadly at the studio, at the cameras, at the shocked audience. What do you call this performance, Jimmy? Because that's what this is, isn't it? A performance. You playing the crusading journalist, asking the tough questions, holding the powerful accountable. Someone needs to, Kimmel muttered. Someone needs to? Depp's voice cracked like a whip. And you appointed yourself to that role? You decided that tonight, on your comedy show, you'd become judge, jury, and executioner? The production staff were frantically trying to communicate through their headsets, but the situation had spiraled so far beyond normal protocol that nobody seemed to know how to handle it. The commercial break they should have gone to 15 minutes ago seemed impossible now, the momentum of the confrontation too intense to interrupt. I'm asking questions that people want answered, Kimmel insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. People want answered? Depp shook his head in disgust. Or questions that will get you clicks? Questions that will trend on social media? Questions that will get people talking about Jimmy Kimmel instead of whatever actually newsworthy thing happened today? That's not what this is about, Kimmel protested weakly. Then what is it about, Jimmy? Depp leaned forward, placing his hands on Kimmel's desk. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a desperate grab for relevance from a host whose ratings have been slipping for years. The accusation hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Kimmel's face flushed red, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. My ratings are fine, he said through gritted teeth. Are they? Depp asked mockingly. Because I've heard differently. I've heard that maybe the king of late night isn't quite as secure on his throne as he'd like everyone to believe. You don't know what you're talking about, Kimmel snapped. Don't I? Depp straightened up, his voice taking on a dangerous calm. See, Jimmy, the difference between you and me is that when my life fell apart, it happened in public. Everyone got to watch. Everyone got to judge. But you? You get to hide behind your desk, behind your writers, behind your carefully crafted image of being America's sweetheart. I don't hide behind anything, Kimmel protested. No? Then let's talk about your life, Jimmy. Let's talk about your controversies. Let's dig into your personal relationships, your business dealings, your private moments of weakness. Depp's voice was building to a crescendo now. Let's see how you like being dissected on national television by someone who's supposed to be your peer. The challenge was unmistakable, and the entire studio held its breath waiting for Kimmel's response. Kimmel's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. The usually quick-witted host found himself completely speechless, faced with the very tactics he'd been using turned back on him with surgical precision. What's wrong, Jimmy? Depp pressed, his voice deadly quiet now. Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you're just realizing what it feels like to be on the other side of this. This is my show, Kimmel finally managed, his voice shaky. Your show, Depp repeated, nodding slowly. Right. Your show, your rules, your agenda? And everyone else is just supposed to sit there and take whatever you dish out, is that it? That's not how it works, Kimmel protested, but his earlier confidence had completely evaporated. Then how does it work, Jimmy? Explain it to me. Explain it to everyone watching. Depp gestured toward the cameras. Tell them how you decide which guests get the friendly treatment and which ones get the interrogation. Tell them how you prepare for interviews like this. The audience was completely transfixed, watching this master class in verbal combat play out before their eyes. Several people in the front row had their phones out, recording every moment of what they knew would become legendary television. I prepare the same way for every guest, Kimmel said weakly. Do you? Depp's eyebrows raised mockingly. So when you have someone on to promote their new romantic comedy, you ask them about their divorce proceedings too? When you interview musicians, you grill them about their tax problems? When politicians come on, you stick to asking about their personal relationships? That's different, Kimmel mumbled. Different how? Depp demanded. Because they're not as easy a target? Because they might actually fight back? Because their publicists have more power than mine? The truth of it hit like a sledgehammer. The calculated nature of the attack became crystal clear to everyone watching. This wasn't journalism. It wasn't even entertainment. It was bullying disguised as late-night television. I ask the questions people want answered, Kimmel repeated. But it sounded like a mantra he was trying to convince himself of rather than anyone else. No, Jimmy, Depp said, his voice filled with something between pity and disgust. You ask the questions that make you feel important. You ask the questions that let you pretend you're something more than a guy telling jokes behind a desk. I don't have to listen to this, Kimmel said, but he made no move to leave or end the interview. Actually, you do, Depp replied, because this is your show, remember? These are your cameras, your audience, your moment. You created this situation, Jimmy. You invited me here to humiliate me, and now you get to live with the consequences. The production crew behind the cameras were frantically trying to figure out what to do. The director kept starting to call for commercial breaks, but then stopping, knowing that cutting away now would be admitting defeat and potentially losing the most talked-about television moment in years. Look, Kimmel tried one more time, his voice pleading now. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Maybe we can start over. Talk about your film. Start over? Depp laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you can just reset after what you've done here? You think you can ambush someone and then just say, oops, my bad, let's talk about movies? I was just doing my job, Kimmel said desperately. Your job? Depp's voice rose again. Your job is to entertain people, Jimmy. Your job is to make them laugh, maybe learn something interesting about your guests. Your job is not to destroy people for sport. I wasn't trying to destroy anyone, Kimmel protested. Then what were you trying to do? Depp demanded. Because from where I sit, it looks like you were trying to get me to break down on camera. You were trying to get me to lose my temper, say something stupid, give you a viral moment that would boost your ratings and your ego. The accuracy of the assessment was written all over Kimmel's face. He'd been caught red-handed, exposed in front of his own audience as exactly the kind of person he'd spent years pretending not to be. Well, congratulations, Jimmy, Depp continued. You got your viral moment. You got me to lose my temper. You got your show talked about. But you also showed everyone exactly who you really are. Who I really am, Kimmel asked weakly. A bully, Depp said simply. A coward who hides behind his platform to attack people when they're vulnerable. Someone who built a career on being likable and then threw it all away for a few minutes of feeling superior to someone else. The words hit their target with devastating accuracy. Kimmel visibly flinched, his carefully constructed public persona crumbling in real time. You want to know the really sad part, Jimmy? Depp asked, his voice softer now but no less cutting. I actually respected you. I thought you were one of the good ones. I thought you understood what it meant to be in this business, to be human, to make mistakes and try to do better. I am trying to do better, Kimmel whispered. By ambushing guests? By attacking people who come on your show in good faith? By using your platform to settle scores or boost ratings? Depp shook his head. That's not doing better, Jimmy. That's being exactly the kind of person this industry creates too much of already. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ever-present hum of the studio equipment seemed muted, as if the entire building was holding its breath. I think we're done here, Depp said finally, straightening his jacket and looking directly into the nearest camera. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you got to see something real tonight." He turned and walked toward the edge of the stage, his footsteps echoing in the absolute silence. Just before he reached the curtain, he stopped and looked back at Kimmel, who was still standing behind his desk like a statue. "For what it's worth, Jimmy," Depp said quietly, "you had everything. You had the respect, the audience, the platform to actually make a difference. And you threw it all away for this moment. I hope it was worth it." With that, Johnny Depp walked off the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, leaving behind a host whose career would never recover from what had just transpired, an audience that had witnessed television history, and footage that would be analyzed and discussed for years to come. The cameras kept rolling for several more seconds, capturing Kimmel standing alone at his desk, the weight of what he'd done finally settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. When they finally cut to commercial, it was far too late to undo the damage that had been done. That's the story of how Johnny Depp exposed Jimmy Kimmel for who he really was, live on television, in front of millions of viewers. What did you think of how Depp handled the situation? Was he right to call out Kimmel so directly, or should he have taken the high road? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories from Hollywood that you won't